Now, we've all heard the crazy rumors circulating the web about a new Nintendo Switch, and apparently it's going to be amazing. Now, for the most part, I have been watching from the sidelines, looking at all of this sort of going on. And I gotta say, some of the things that people are saying are quite interesting, and surprisingly enough, also possible. So in this video, I will finally look into all of this so you guys and gals know what's up and what it all even means. So, let's dive right in. Now, this whole story actually started quite a long time ago. The first time a new Nintendo Switch version was mentioned anywhere was on the 24th of August last year, 2020. And the website in question was Bloomberg. For the people who don't know, these people usually cover things related to business, economics, and the financial markets. Personally, I sometimes read their articles because I do a lot of stock market investing, and for the most part, they are a great source. Although I also have to admit that there is a lot of speculation involved, and that's because of one thing: profits. Sure, a lot of people will click on an article talking about a new Switch version, but there's also another reason why that's the case. In the world of stocks, we call it buy the rumor, sell the news, which means you buy a stock based on a rumor and then hope that it's true. Because if that's the case, the stock usually jumps higher, allowing you to sell it for a profit. So while a lot of people say that Bloomberg is incredibly trustworthy, they aren't always that good because of the whole buy the rumor, sell the news approach. So keep that in mind. But they were the ones to start this new trend. Now, the next time they covered this topic in any way was around 20 days ago. On the 4th of March, they published an article called Nintendo Plans Switch Model with Bigger Samsung OLED Display. And in that article, they said the following: the Nintendo Corporation plans to unveil a model of its Switch gaming console equipped with a bigger Samsung OLED display this year, hoping the larger display can prop up demand in time for the holidays. The Samsung Display Company will start mass production of the 7-inch 720p resolution OLED panels as early as June, with an initial monthly target of just under 1 million units, with the displays being slated for shipment to assemblers around July. And the representatives of Nintendo and Samsung Display declined to comment on all of this. So this is where it all began, to be honest. That's where the original statement of a 7-inch screen came from. Now, a lot of you might be wondering, does that even make a real difference? And the answer is 100% yes. While the resolution might not be higher, the screen will go from 6.2 inches to 7 inches, which will probably get rid of most of the bezels around the screen, if not all. And aside from that, the jump from an LCD to an OLED one would also be quite big. While OLED screens are more expensive to make, they have greater dynamic ranges and energy efficiency. And they are typically also thinner and lighter in weight than conventional LCDs. So aside from making it look better, the Switch also becomes a bit thinner and more energy efficient most likely. However, since that article, more and more rumors have popped up, and now Bloomberg has published another article that has even more information. And this one is especially exciting because if this is actually true, the next Switch will be the best console of the next generation as well. And yes, you heard me right, I think the Nintendo Switch is better than the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Fight me. Now, in this new article, they mentioned the following. There's a rumored new Nintendo Switch Pro model, and this version will use an upgraded NVIDIA chip with deep learning super sampling support for 4K gaming in docked mode. Now, I bet most of you have no idea what that even means, which is understandable. I was confused as well, but let me explain. This deep learning super sampling stuff is nothing more than an upscaling technique. It uses deep learning and artificial intelligence to upscale lower resolution images to a higher resolution for display on higher resolution computer monitors, or screens. NVIDIA claims this technology upscales images with quality similar to that of rendering the image natively in the higher resolution, but with less strain on the hardware inside. In a way, something like this was also used by a console like the PS4 Pro, which couldn't really run 4K, but was able to use upscaling to get there. And I bet this version from Nvidia is even better than the one seen in the PS4 Pro. But still, in a lot of ways, upscaled graphics are more like the light version. It looks really good, but doesn't really achieve it. I bet if this was used in a Nintendo Switch, it would look similar to the 4K quality that Google Stadia achieves. Although I think Stadia will still do a slightly better job. They are mostly limited by their internet quality after all. Aside from that, it would also mean that the new chip inside of the Nintendo Switch Pro would be a GeForce RTX 20 or 30 series. And that's because these graphics cards are capable of doing the deep learning super sampling upscaling technique that was mentioned in the article. These came out in 2018 and 2020. So that would mean that the new Switch Pro would get a significant upgrade just from that. You gotta remember, the chip that's currently in the Switch was released in 2015. So that's gonna be quite a jump in power. Now, aside from this, the Bloomberg article also mentions that the new Switch model will have an improved CPU and increased memory. All of this will give developers and Nintendo staff a lot more options when making games, and it will also become a lot faster when opening apps, games, starting up, and everything else. Now, one of the last things Bloomberg mentions is the price and release date. According to them, Nintendo is planning to release the Switch model by the end of this year, and it's gonna be between $349 and $399. Clearly, Nintendo has some big plans for redesigning the Nintendo Switch. The best console they have ever made, in my opinion. Well, unless Bloomberg is totally wrong on all of this, which could be true, but I will admit, all the things they mentioned in these articles are possible. So, what do I think of all of this? Well, I'm actually impressed, and I gotta say, I think this version of the Switch will be more powerful than people can imagine. Like I said before, the jump from a 2015 graphics chip to one that was released in 2018 or 2020 is going to be huge. And in order to get an idea why that's the case, I will explain it to you all with a little story. As you all know, me and my editor do a lot of video editing in order to create these videos. Well, it's mostly my editor Kotlol nowadays. But still, I use editing software very often. And this also goes for stuff like Photoshop. And as you can imagine, this stuff is quite intense for a computer. So if you want to have a good experience on a laptop for when you're on the go, this will be a hard thing to pull off. And so, back in 2016, when I was looking for a laptop, I ran into a really big problem, which I didn't solve in the end as well. All the laptops that I could buy that were powerful enough were really thick, heavy, and bulky. And when traveling, that's not really ideal. In the end, I had to go with one of those because it was my only choice. All the laptops that were light and small had graphics chips that were really weak. And I bet this was also a problem for Nintendo when making the Switch. All the small-sized graphics chips out there were kind of garbage. However, in the last couple of years, this issue has basically been solved. And I really noticed this when I bought my new laptop last year. I ended up buying the Asus G14, which is a really small, light, compact, and surprisingly powerful laptop. I can play almost any modern game on this at high settings. Now, inside of it is the GTX 1650, which came out in 2019, and it's a really small graphics card. And I gotta say, it's pretty amazing. So laptops have come a long way in the last 3 years, and I bet Nintendo will take full advantage of that as well. We have even seen this huge power jump in devices like phones. Back in 2016, a phone with just 6 GB of memory was insane. And now most phones have at least 8 and some even 12. And that stuff is really important for starting up games and programs really fast. Aside from that, it also helps with running those things well. But what about the Nintendo Switch? How much memory does it have? Well, only 4 GB. So again, they could easily go to 6 or maybe even 8. And this would also make a huge difference. In a lot of ways, the Nintendo Switch is really outdated. The technology inside of it was from 2015, so in 2021, that just won't cut it. However, does it stack up to the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X? Well, in my opinion, yes. it will still have the huge advantage of being a home console as well as a portable. In my opinion, that's a huge plus, as well as the fact that it can easily be set up and played anywhere with friends. I also hope they don't get rid of the little kickstand in the back and detachable Joy-Cons. Sure, they might not be perfect, but I do like them a lot. However, there was always one thing that was gonna be a problem for the current version of the Nintendo Switch. It's not powerful enough by a long shot, and so modern games would look quite terrible on it. And I bet a lot of developers would also have a hard time making or porting games for it. We have already seen this with games like The Witcher 3. Sure, it runs on the Switch, but to be honest, it's a miracle, and it doesn't look that great. So in time, this would only get worse and worse. So it's about time an updated version would be released. Now, only time will tell if Nintendo actually releases this fabled Nintendo Switch Pro. Sure, it must happen at some point, but maybe that won't be this year. However, I do hope we will get something soon. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to let me know in the comments down below what you think about the Nintendo Switch Pro. Hit that subscribe button, the bell, like, comment, share, favorite, divide, conquer, I don't know, do all the things.